What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and I'm joined by Degenerate Jay, and we are going to be talking about Catwoman in the second Batman movie, just basically asking the question, will she return? Because I think, the odds, well, depending on who you ask, they could be pretty high, they could be pretty low. This probably, let's just get this out of the way fast, we'll deal with spoilers. We could probably talk about the film, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, obviously turn away right now. Now, with that being said, let me just quickly plug my good friend Jay here. I'm going to put all this stuff in the description below, but amazing guy. He's covered the Batman as well on his channel. And Jay, thank you so much for being here with me.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about it. Probably the day before or after this came out, my spoiler review will be going up where I talk more about the movie too. So this is something I'm very passionate about.
Very, very nice. So I'll give it to you first. I kind of asked you the question just to kind of see what you thought off the air, off this video. So obviously, we know their kind of relationship in comics and just in other mediums, right? She's not always there. I mean, boiled down, right? She's not always in it. So she doesn't, I think, have to be in the second movie. And I've made a video talking about, even the villain. Like, could you do Joker? Would you do Court of Owls? We've even had Matt Reeves say, right, that, like, Joker, he was just there to kind of, like, say he exists, but he wasn't there with the intention of making him the villain of the second movie. So with that being said, obviously at the end of this movie, the Batman, obviously Selina and Bruce split up and they go literally they go their separate ways. So do you think they would bring her back? Do you think she'd be, I guess there's a couple angles, right? Would she be a main character? Because this movie really was those two, maybe Gordon, Riddler were kind of the next two after them, but these were the two mains. So do you think they would do that again for the second one? Do you think she'd be almost like a cameo? Maybe she would skip the second one entirely and be brought back for the third one? What do you think makes maybe the most sense?
Well, one thing that's really interesting about this movie is you never really know where Matt Reeves wanted to take it, until he takes it there. They did a very good job of not leaking everything, but also almost weaponizing set leaks in a way where it would be very clearly an image of Catwoman or very clearly an image of Batman's suit or something like that, hyping people up from the set, but not enough to ever tell you what was going on. So with Matt Reeves and kind of this direction, it seems like we don't know where he's going to take it, and that's worth pointing out. But yeah, in the comics, their relationship's really all over the place. It really depends on the continuity too. I mean, there is a whole DC multiverse out there. Some of them, Bruce and Selina have been married and had a kid. Other ones, they're very on and off again. One of them dies. But the general main continuity thing is that this is a relationship. It's almost like star-crossed lovers, where they have all that chemistry and it makes sense and it works when they're together, but there's too many things in life splitting them up. And more recent comics, like the Tom King comics like Batman Catwoman, or even his run on Batman Rebirth, they've tried to, I guess, elaborate on that and make more of a serious relationship out of that and graft Catwoman into the Bat family. But that's a newer thing, to actually make that a really standardized relationship that is almost committed. The thing with the movies is we've only really seen a little bit of Catwoman in the past. She's appeared a couple of times. Obviously, I'm not really going to talk about the Adam West stuff because that's just its own thing. Mad respect to Adam West, but it was not trying to do really a comic booky thing. But when you get to something like Batman Returns, which was kind of Tim Burton going his own way, he was more interested in those characters and pairing them up and stuff, but it ends on a split. And then The Dark Knight Rises is kind of the opposite, which I guess spoilers for that, 10-year-old movie, where it kind of ends with them together. So there's not really a precedent in film. It seems like Matt Reeves is very, very inspired by things that came before. Even something like Batman Telltale season 1 and 2, like you could tell that parts of those stories had played into this. I haven't read any interviews on it. I don't know if he's talked about that specifically, but you can see elements of those stories kind of leaking in and being like the best versions of themselves in the Batman. So it is a really interesting question. I know that was a roundabout way to answer it, but I could really see her not coming back in the second, because this seems like a Batman who really needs to learn himself, and I'm not sure how well he'll do that with the distraction of a gorgeous drop-dead lady like Catwoman around him, who very clearly clouded his judgment in parts of this movie as well. with that chemistry. But you know, it seemed like his relationship with Alfred is improving. His relationship with Gordon was being strengthened over the course of this movie, strained and then strengthened. And I really think that it would benefit the movie to focus on some of those relationships too, along with introducing new villains for this universe. Like, I know that I know there's a lot of places you can go, but tragic villains instead of just the one that we saw teased at the end of the first movie. For the second movie, I think would be interesting, like Mr. Freeze. You know, seeing sort of that where Batman is trying to be this more hopeful version of Batman, but also dealing with a really depressing story or character like that. And then you have the question of how many movies are in this universe. I just don't know.
Like, I imagine it as a trilogy, but then also you've had Robert Pattinson say he'll do as many as, as they want him to, or as many as he can do. Then you have all the TV shows too, right? Like the Gotham one being, or Gotham PD one now being basically an Arkham Asylum show, which was kind of changed recently, right? So you have a lot of things you could, and by the way, even with those things, you have the possibility of making, in fact, that's what they are doing, right? Making your own universe out of this. You could pull some of these characters here and there. Like, you could have Catwoman appear in Arkham Asylum, maybe have some of Poison Ivy, or even introduce Poison Ivy in something like that, bring him to a movie. I don't necessarily recommend some of that stuff, but other stuff, maybe. Yeah, I think, honestly, the bigger shock to maybe, like, casual movie audiences would be not having her in the second movie. I actually think that's probably, like you said, the right choice, but I also just think it would come across as the biggest shock, just because, again, like, these are the main, I would say Robert Pattinson number one, and then Zoe Kravitz number two, so not having her in the second one I think would be a pretty big deal, but probably, like you said, the right deal. I mean, you have other, I loved and I said this in my review too, Batman and Gordon. Their relationship was amazing. Like, I just love him calling, Gordon calling him chief and man and stuff. Like, it was just it was fun. It was really fun, but I really immediately believed it, that these two, like, had a mutual trust for each other, mutual respect, and they were willing to do whatever they needed to for the other person. I love that. So to see more of that, yeah, Alfred, I liked what they were doing, but they just didn't do that. I don't know if it's a weakness, but Alfred was not in this movie very much at all. So I would like to see that a little bit more in the second one. And I think you probably didn't have Alfred in it as much in this movie because you had so many other things to do. So if you remove somebody like Catwoman, yeah, you can give Bruce time with these other characters, and you can also give Bruce, or I guess Batman, time with the villains or the enemies kind of one-on-one. I mean, he did have plenty of, I'm not saying Catwoman helped him out of every situation, but a lot of the times they aided each other, which was fine. But to give him kind of a, it's just him versus them, or maybe him and Alfred figuring stuff out versus them, instead of Catwoman also helping, I think that, maybe that helps Batman's character even more. So I think, yeah, I think that's and if you did a Mr. Freeze thing, or even if you did like a Joker thing, I don't know if you need Catwoman there, you know what I mean? I think you can just lean maybe even more into the villain's relationship, or I guess the villain's story, and then the villain's relationship with Batman, and you could just make that kind of the central point of the film. So yeah, if I had to predict it, well, here's the tough thing. I would predict that the right move is not having her. I don't know if maybe they, you know what I mean? It's almost, to me, it's not exactly like this, but for Fantastic Beasts, if anybody knows the behind-the-scenes stuff, is Newt Scamander was only supposed to be in the first movie. They had planned it only to be one, and then somewhere in the mid, I don't know when, J.K. Rowling maybe steps in, but he was only supposed to be in the first movie, and then they've now made him a centralized character in all of this other stuff that he was never a part of, or he was never supposed to be a main character of. So I don't get the same sense, but it could be similar, or maybe Matt Reeves thinks, I'm going into this movie just having Catwoman in this one. Maybe we'll bring her back in 3. And I think that makes sense. To have her only be in 1 and not in like the finishing the trilogy if you are done there, right? That's kind of lame. So maybe that was the plan, but then maybe he's like, well, I can shoehorn her into other stories, or I could have her come back just to get her back. And I don't think that's not the right move, just like I don't think having Newt in these movies, these Fantastic Beasts movies, besides one, is the right move. So, Jay, anything to say on that, or any kind of finishing thoughts here?
Yeah, I could go on a big tangent about the Fantastic Beasts movies just from an outsider perspective, but I will not. The thing with these movies, though, is it's difficult because I usually feel not like qualified to critique them. I'm not saying it like that. I'm talking from a fan perspective, and obviously everything is open to criticism or discussion or just having a good time talking about it. But with Matt Reeves' movie, I just left so impressed. I left so happy with what I saw. That this is the first time seeing a Batman movie where I don't feel like I have to excuse things away. And I'm sure you know what I mean by that, Alex. Like going back through live action Batman, I guess interpretations or adaptations or whatever you want to call them, like Michael Keaton. You have to excuse a lot of stuff away in terms of if you're trying to look at it as a comic adaptation, it just isn't. Tim Burton was interested in those characters in terms of who they were, but not interested in comic books really. So he kind of just took those characters and did whatever he wanted with them. And you obviously see the same with Nolan, like with the Nolan verse. This is not a dig at him. I know The Dark Knight is a lot of people's favorite movie. It's not mine, but I still really love it. And as a movie, I thought it was amazing. I thought that as a trilogy, the Nolan verse Batman was awesome. But in terms of being Batman himself, it just wasn't really the most Batman thing for me. Like, this is the first Batman live action movie where I feel like it's not afraid to take itself seriously, but also isn't embarrassed of being based on a comic book. It's trying to really keep the spirit and soul of all those things alive, not on a surface level, not on a level of like, I read one book, here's my take. It's on a level of like, hey, this is our version of this character, we're doing our best to keep true to the soul of him. And the reason that I bring that up is because we have our critiques and we have our, I guess, our thoughts on this too, and I think those are all valid, everybody's opinions on the movie, but I'm just so impressed by what they were able to accomplish that I don't want to say I know the second movie will be good, because obviously there can always be something that happens, but I would not say I don't. I would say I have complete faith in it, for whatever they want to do. If they want to bring Catwoman back, I'd love that. If they, like, I'm being honest, the Bat-Cat relationship in the comics and in the DCAU and stuff, it's always been one of my favorite relationships for an on-screen or on-page couple of human beings, because it feels real and fun and interesting and also sad and human. Like, there's a lot of depth to it. And so if they want to bring her back in the second or third movie, I'd love to see that. But also, you could kind of move away from that too and do a lot of stuff as well if they want to keep going after the third movie. Robert Pattinson's Batman becoming more hopeful, and you see the connection he has with that orphan child in in the Batman. Is this a character who maybe would be more open to taking on a Robin? Questions like that are also very out there as well. And with them building up this universe, I'm really interested to see where they take it. I'm interested to see if they ever go back on what they said about not bringing this Batman into the normal DC film universe, because it seems like they're bringing Keaton into that, but he's old. No offense to him, he's amazing and I really do like him, but he's much older and I couldn't see him doing in-suit stuff for more than a few years. So then what will happen to the main DC timeline when they don't really have a Batman anymore? Is there going to be some kind of crossover at some point? I don't really know. Like, the sky is the limit with this. And I think I want to end on one of the best things that I saw was, I think his name's Toby Emmerich. I could be messing up his name, but one of the higher ups at WB saying that their goal after the Batman is to have these movies be creator led. So for example, something like this, where Matt Reeves and the writers, they did pretty much everything. There wasn't really much studio interference outside of a couple of little things. And I think that as long as they stick to that, I think that we're going to be happy with what they make. If you want to say, hey, listen, we need Aquaman alive, don't kill him in Aquaman 2 because he needs to be in this team-up movie, that's fine with me. That's like acceptable studio interference where we have a general plan, almost like the Fox X-Men type plan, where it's like, let your creator do what they want, but have a little bit of a roadmap. I like that more than the nitpicky oversight route, and so I hope they stick to that, because if they do, I'm sure Matt Reeves will come back to impress us again.
I've said this even in the Court of Owls video, right? Because I think they work as better villains in the like a trilogy, like the ending of a trilogy, so a third movie. So I would prefer them not be the second one. But what I've always said in these videos is, who am I? Oh, actually, exactly like you said. I don't want to immediately say, you know what I mean, like these movies are going to be masterpieces going forward. I'm too cynical for that. But I also want to give credit. You know what I mean? Like you said, like this is my favorite movie of the year, like pretty easily. I love this movie, and I think they did an incredible job. So who am I really to judge, you know what I mean, the decision making? If Catwoman comes back, make it work. And then as long as it works, I mean, you know, we'll obviously judge it and we can change our minds, right? If it sucks, then we say it sucks. But as of right now, I mean, they did a really good job, and I'm willing to kind of trust them for this next, even the Robert Pattinson thing, right? Casting him. How many people liked that at the time? Really not a lot. Not a lot of people went for it. But obviously it was proven to be pretty darn successful, I would say, over time. So they deserve, I think, at the very least, a little benefit of the doubt right now. So let us know, guys, what you think about all this in the comments below. I'm going to leave Jay's stuff also in the description if you guys want to check out his channel. He's got a Let's Play channel. An amazing, amazing guy. Amazing, amazing creator. Jay, thank you again so much for being here with me.
Hey man, thanks for having me. Sorry if I rambled a little too much about this, but this is probably my favorite movie in years. You know, this and No Way Home. It's like, fans of superheroes, whether it's just on screen or on the page or whatever, they are getting a lot of treats lately, and it's really nice to see the respect for the audience, the respect for the fans, and how much these creators love these characters. Like, it just makes me truly happy. So thanks for letting me be here to talk about it too.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for watching as always, and we hope to see you all on the next video.